Well, good morning. Today we're going to talk a little bit about flower pot corals and what it takes to keep them growing, keep them colorful and wide open and thriving in your reef tank. Particularly, of course, that class is Alveopora, Goniopora, and Bernardpora. Now, just to start off with the basics, with the major elements, it's good to keep your salt or your salinity in your tank somewhere around 1.026 or 35%. And I say that because that maximizes the trace and the major elements that you need in the water for corals to survive in most all aquatic life. I keep my alkalinity somewhere between 8 and 10, which the gonies love and the flower pots love. Magnesium from 1350 to 1450. Really on the top of that scale, I prefer somewhere around 1450 to 1485 for my tank, only because the Goniopora really respond well to high magnesium. And as for calcium, anywhere between 380 and 450 is fine. If you start getting white spots on your glass, you know you're getting calcium precipitate and you want to cut back on the calcium a little bit. If you get over 450 and you're not really having a good uptake of those major elements in your tank, not good absorption from the corals, you may end up with those white spots all over your filters and tank and sump and everything else. So as we're on the subject, we're going to start talking about trace elements. And flower pots particularly really need iron and magnesium. I used to use all different kinds of trace elements. I tried this one, I tried that one. Had a problem with some of them were too much. I go into the extremes. Some, no matter how much I dose, I'd always come up empty, not showing up on ICP tests. So I started using Replenish. Replenish is made by Brightwell Aquatics. It's an all-around, all-in-one trace element dosing system. I really like using it ever since I have been using it. Every time I do an ICP test, my test comes back right in the middle. So, or a little bit low, you know, at least it's traceable, and I know that they're in there. Never extremes and never untraceable. And it's a good product. All I really use is about 2 milliliters every other day in 100 gallons, and that's plenty for me. Again, you want to do an ICP test to make sure that you're using what you need and not overdosing anything, because that could be very harmful. I have the video running of our Alveopora tree, and you could see the difference as it was before I started using Replenish. It was kind of closed up. It looked good, but more like the little ball in the picture you see on the left of the video, on the bottom. Kind of a ball that didn't kind of come out and wave. Now, comes out and it waves, looks beautiful, just nice and full, exactly what we're looking for. I did want to mention too that be careful not to make the mistake if you're using a salt and the salt claims to have trace elements in it, that doing water changes on a weekly basis is going to be enough to feed your Goniopora, your Alveopora, your Bernardpora. The truth of the matter is they need a lot of manganese and magnesium. So that little bit of water change that the trace elements are replaced with, maybe 10 to 20% of the water, just isn't enough to make it through the week to last. So you're more than likely going to have to dose some trace elements once you have an established tank, and that's true no matter what corals you have in your tank. There's just not enough of those minor elements inside of that change water to give you what you're going to need. Also, a good idea to remember is that most trace elements are naturally absorbed or depleted out of the tank within 24 to 48 hours. That's why with Replenish it says to use it about every other day, every 48 hours to dose, and just enough to give the tank what it needs for the next 2 days. Plenty to take care of your Goniopora. Another thing that I want to talk about a little bit is about the absorption of trace elements. And there's 3 primary ways that trace elements are absorbed out of your tank, and you have to be careful not to go too crazy on any of these, and because it'll deplete your trace elements and you'll end up putting more money into your tank to make up for what you're taking out of your tank due to your own maintenance. That sounds like it's a good idea. First of all, livestock absorbs corals, inverts, pods, fish, algae. They all absorb trace elements. That's part of the ecosystem. That's fine. That's where we're dosing. However, the second thing we're going to talk about are protein skimmers. Protein skimmers are used commonly right now in the hobby. Everybody has a protein skimmer. However, they absorb or extract a lot of trace elements from your system. And I was watching a video by ACI Aquatics, and if you have a chance, look for it in YouTube and watch it. It's about Goniopora, flower pots, Bernardpora, and whatnot. And they were talking about how they specifically had their skimmate, their wastewater from their skimmer, tested, send it in for an ICP test. When it came back, guess what it was full of? Trace elements, loaded. So he says that he had just completely insane that all the trace elements that were found in that skimmate. So what happens when you're running a skimmer, especially a very efficient skimmer, and you're running it pretty wet, it's sucking out all the trace elements out of your tank. Now, does that mean you don't want to run the skimmer? Well, you probably do, but you may want to adjust it so that it's more of a dry skim, and you may even set it up so that it turns off when you dose your trace elements for maybe 4 hours or so after, to give your corals and your livestock a chance to absorb those trace elements before the skimmer takes it out of the water column. Now, another problem that I've seen, and I've had this problem myself, is refugiums. Most everybody has a refugium. There's all kinds of videos about it. You gotta have them, you gotta have them. I used to have one on my tank that you see here, but I took it off. And since I took it off, you see that Goniopora, it's a Grinch I got from Tidal Gardens on the top right. That coral opened up as soon as I took the refugium off and I started dosing trace elements. Used to be kind of small and it stayed in a little ball. And what I found out was the refugium was too efficient. It was literally stripping everything out of the water column. And it was just a little bit too much. In fact, there's a product called Chaeto Grow that I'm sure you're using if you have a refugium, also by Brightwell Aquatics. It's a great product. I use it on a fish tank I have in the other room, which has some softies in it and stuff like that, but mostly fish. So I need the refugium to take all that waste that the fish build up out of the water. And I dose with the Chaeto Grow, so it replaces the trace elements that the Chaeto is taken out of the water column. The problem is that this is really good for Chaeto, but not necessarily have everything it needs for your corals, especially your gonies. Again, your gonies need the iron, they need the manganese. This has a lot of iron in it, so it definitely replaces the iron, but as far as manganese, not quite what you need for your gonies. So it's an option to use for trace elements if you have a refugium, but you're more than likely going to have to dose manganese alongside with dosing this. Another thing just to mention, if you're using replenish and most trace elements, you can't put it on an automatic feeder because it's got to be shaken before used. And I haven't found any trace elements that don't need to be shaken up really well before you use them, so putting them on an auto feeder could be detrimental to getting a good even balanced feed of trace elements into your tank. Another thing I want to point out is flower pots, they need to eat. They absolutely have to feed them. And the problem that we have is we start starving our corals and our fish because we don't want the nitrates and phosphates to build up and these unwanted wastes, so we cut way back on the food. And when we cut back on the food, the corals don't get the nutrients or the supplements that they need in order to get really colorful, to grow, expand out. If you look at that alveopora that's on the screen right now, that's a Kermit the Frog foot alveopora, and you can see how it just opens up those polys at the end. They look like a frog's foot opening up. Never happened before I started feeding them. In fact, I'm using this by Brightwell Aquatics. It's called Coral Inertia NRG Plus. It's a great product. I just started using it about 2 months ago. I feed my tank twice a week with it. And it's just amazing. All my corals opened up. They started looking good. If you look at the video now, you can see them waving just like torches would wave, in the wave maker. So it does a wonderful job. This food made a big difference for my gonies, and especially for my alveopora and Bernardpora. Everything do really good with this food. There's a lot of other foods. I give mine also Reefroids and Goni Power, maybe twice a month just to supplement. I probably don't really need to. I believe this Inertia has everything that I need in it now, so I don't really need to use the Reefroids or the Goni Power, but I have some, so I just go ahead and give it to them to use it. Not a big deal. Now, we did talk about unwanted waste, and that can be a problem. And as you see in the video here, I have Purigen and Phosguard because that's what I used when I got rid of my refugium. And the reason why I did, well, if you look at Phosguard, for one thing, a small container of it is only about 12 bucks, and this will last me about 6 months. It lasts a long time. I put it in, and I put a little bit less than what's directed. I put it into a sock, and I put it right in my sump in the flow of water, and it does a great job of keeping my phosphate somewhere around 0.01 to about 0.08. That's perfect. That's all I need. I change it only about once every probably 60 to 90 days. That's all it takes. As soon as my phosphate starts to come up a little bit, I change it. In fact, I set it on my calendar now, so I know exactly when to change it, and I don't even have to worry about the numbers coming up. And it's very inexpensive and wonderful to use. And the best part too is with CCAM, along with Brightwell Aquatics, they have an Amazon store, so you can buy directly from them from Amazon and have it shipped right to your house overnight. It's affordable, it's quick, and you don't have to wait forever to get it. Also with Seacam, most local fish stores carry Seacam products, a whole line, so it's easy to get and no problems. One thing I want to mention too is that the Phos Guard isn't anything like the Phos Net. There's 3 different products that Seacam sells for controlling phosphate. Phos Guard is not a GFO, and that's the reason why I use Phos Guard. GFOs are good if you need a very powerful extractor to take heavy metals out, to take phosphate out and everything else. However, GFOs also strip the water column of your trace elements. So if you're using a GFO and you're finding that your gonies aren't opening up and you're having a problem with that, it could be that your GFO is stripping so much of those trace elements out that you simply can't have enough in the water column continually to give them the nourishment that they need. Now, the second product I'm using to control my waste is, of course, Purigen. Purigen is a great product, again, from Seacam, and I'm going to say that it can be recycled. I don't recycle it myself because it's cheap enough. I just dump it out and use it again. But you can go to Seacam's website and see what the process is of recycling it. You could dry it out. I believe you soak it in some bleach and then dry it out again, and it's ready to use after it's been rinsed and dried completely. I'm using this because it does a great job. It keeps my nitrate somewhere around 8 parts per million, and when my phosphates are at about 0.08, 0.05, that's a perfect ratio that I need, so it takes care of everything. Again, I use a little bit less than it recommends because I want nitrates in the water column because, of course, our flower pots, our Goniopora, like a little bit of dirty water. They want some nitrates, so this leaves just enough in there so I don't worry about algae blooms, but at the same time, my corals are getting what they need. The thing about these two working together is they both circulate in about 60 to 90 days. And I also use matrix carbon from Seacam, and that also is good for about 90 days. So all 3 of these can be changed out once every 60 to 90 days, and you don't have to worry too much about, you know, doing this every month and your carbon breaking down in 2 weeks, and now I got to do this. Now, one day, change it all out, we're good to go. So, you know, I just want to share this quick information. Again, I'd encourage you to watch that video from ACI Aquatics about the skimmate and about all the trace elements that were found in their skimmer and how that could affect, of course, the health of your gonies. So appreciate it. There's a link down below so you could get any of these things from Amazon. Just click on it and go. They're great prices. And again, when you're buying from those links, you're buying directly from Seacam or Brightwell Aquatics. And in Amazon, it ships right to your house overnight, free shipping in most cases. So enjoy it. I love that Alveopora tree I have there on the right side in the video now. Since I started using this, I mean, between the Inertia and the Replenish I started using from Brightwell, I mean, that Alveopora just opened up crazy. It whips around more than, let's see the torch on the top right? The Alveopora is moving more than the torch does. And it's just beautiful. The color is incredible. So I hope you enjoyed this. We also have, I wanted to tell you, we have a new, where is this? Goni image. Where did I put that? There it is. We have a Facebook page that we opened up for Southwest Florida reef keepers. So if you live in Southwest Florida and you want to get some, maybe trade some corals, fish, looking for a good shop, just help each other out, post some videos and images, you can go to Southwest Florida Reef Keepers and join, and we'd love to have you and see what you have in your tanks. We also started an Alveopora Keepers Facebook page, and we did this group only because there's nobody out there that has them. I love Alveopora. I think they're beautiful, and as a matter of fact, there's so many varieties and colors coming out, color morphs, that it's hard not to collect them. I've got about 6 different ones in my tank with all different colors. I got a few more coming, and so I really have a couple of Alveopora gardens that are built up like trees, like this one you're looking at here, and it's just really neat. So if you're into Alveopora, and they're very hardy, much more hardier than Goniopora and Bernardpora. Well, Bernardpora are pretty easy too. Gonies can be a little tricky. They're very touches to light, very sensitive to, again, trace elements and nutrients. However, Alveopora aren't. They're pretty hardy, so I would highly recommend, if you like flower pots, to get into some of those Alveopora too. They're a lot of fun. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it helps you out. We at FishyFins appreciate you watching. Links down below if you want to get any of these products. We'll see you guys in your reef tanks. Have a wonderful day.